From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually you see me here in the studio with my broadcast partner, Eric Rosen, but Eric could not make it to the studio tonight, but I think we have him on the telephone, right, Eric?
Yes, we do. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Rosen, and I am so excited for this week of In the Bleachers with you, the amazing Jaime the Sportsman Hixson.
Well, Eric, it's certainly a pleasure to have you join us on the phone under the circumstances. If I'm not mistaken, I think you ran into a little bit of car trouble, didn't you?
A little bit, and also I'm packing for my vacation tomorrow, so I couldn't exactly be at the studio, but I wouldn't miss another week of doing this show with you.
Well, thank you so much, first of all. We're kind of sort of on autopilot right now because Eileen Hanlon is on the other side of the glass right now, but she's double dipping right now because not only does she have to take care of stuff on the other side of the glass, but she's also doing her regular job in her own office. So we're going to try and get things rolling, even with her doing her thing. And as we speak, she's giving us thumbs up right now. But first things first, we have a lot. Yep. Eileen just waved back to you.
Awesome.
We got a lot of stuff to discuss, namely what's going on with March Madness. Since we are in the second full week of March, that means the NCAA tournament is going to be starting really, really soon.
That's right. Tomorrow night, the official beginning of the insanity, of the madness known as March Madness. The 60-18 field was revealed yesterday on Selection Sunday. There were 36 at-large bids. Those are teams basically that are selected by the selection committee based on strength of schedule, conference record, top 25 record, a lot of things taking into account. And then the remaining 32 are what you call automatic bids. They come in through their conference tournaments. 31 of the 32 are conference tournaments. The only exception is the Ivy League, which is decided by the regular season champion.
That's exactly right. The Ivy League has been doing this basically since they started sponsoring basketball all those years ago.
And
to each their own, excuse me, Eric, to each their own, but I kind of like the fact that the Ivy League is keeping it old school as opposed to going through a tournament. That way we won't have to see a team under 500 in the tournament like we do, like we've had so many different times before in the tournament. Not to say that it's happening this year, because the closest thing we have to a barely 500 team is Austin Peay, but it's good to see some of the institutions keep it old school.
Actually, there's one team in the tournament that is below 500, and this is crazy to say it, but Holy Cross, the Crusaders.
That's right. That's right. Holy Cross won the Patriot League, and they did it by pulling off 3 consecutive upsets. They beat the top seed, which was, I think, Lehigh or Bucknell. It was Bucknell. They beat Bucknell. Then they beat the Army. And then they got a huge victory against Lehigh. Every game was on the road. And to think, Holy Cross had major problems winning road games in their own league this season. And finally, by the time March comes around, they come up with that big signature win.
Yeah, they went on a 4-game winning streak to finish 14-19, and now they got to face the Southern University Jaguars that won the Southwestern Athletic Conference against Jackson State by 1 point. In fact, it was Adrian Rogers who made the jump shot with about 17 seconds left. So that's going to be an interesting matchup in the first 4 that's taking place on Wednesday, March 16th.
You mentioned the conference tournaments. Did you see the shots that were hit near the end of regulation or overtime, specifically Indiana falling the way they did to Michigan, and also that 4 overtime thriller between UConn and Cincinnati?
Oh, yes. Yeah, there were some very amazing games. The SEC championship game between Texas A&M and Kentucky was outstanding. For that to go to overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And watching Seton Hall do the impossible and beat Villanova in the Big East final, that was one of the highlights of this past weekend.
Yeah, easily the highlight of this past weekend, especially in our neck of the woods. Seton Hall is going to be one of a handful of teams that's going to represent the tri-state area in the tournament. And Seton Hall won the tournament with 6 sophomores on their roster. The most well-known of those sophomores is Isaiah Whitehead, who went to Lincoln High in Brooklyn. And he wound up really shining, not just in that championship game, but in the entire tournament as well. He got a big block shot and a big rebound at the end of the Marquette game. Almost basically carried Seton Hall to victory against Villanova in a game that they almost blew a double-digit lead.
It was a very amazing performance by them, and the fact that they're in the Midwest Conference and they got a heck of a matchup coming up against the Gonzaga Bulldogs, who won the West Coast Conference for an unprecedented 18th straight season. Probably one of my favorite matchups of that region.
To think, Gonzaga has been doing this 18 years in a row. There was a time when they were the Cinderella. Now they're a national power right now and being mentioned for a possible Final Four spot. This is probably the worst matchup that the Pirates could have drawn, because not only does Gonzaga have that veteran leadership, but they also have one of the most underrated players in the country, Donatas Sabonis. And and when you consider that Seton Hall has also had problems with foul trouble, especially on the front line, this is really playing into Gonzaga's hands.
Well, if you look at the strength of these teams and the weaknesses, I think Whitehead has had turnover issues.
Yeah.
In the beginning of his career with Seton Hall. But since late January, especially in the final 11 regular season games, he shot 41 of 81, which is a 50.6% clip from three-point range, and averaged 1.5 points per field goal attempt. That's great. But outside of Isaiah Whitehead, they're not a great shooting team, Seton Hall.
Yeah.
They really, even though they beat Villanova and Xavier in the Big East tournament, outside of him and some players, really, who does Seton Hall really rely on?
Well, aside from Whitehead, there's also Aaron Gordon, who's a graduate student transfer. There's Angel Delgado, who's a very, very underrated big man for them. If he can stay out of foul trouble, he can really give Seton Hall a big, big boost. There's also the other sophomore that they have, Kadeem Carrington, who's a very good point guard prospect. And they're very well coached with Kevin Willard and 2 guys who used to play for the Pirates back in the day. Shaheen Holloway, who was a really good point guard, and also Grant Billmeyer, who was one of their former guys on the front line. These are guys that have really gone through the wars as players, so they're really going to be there to teach these youngsters exactly what it's like to try and get through the big tournament. Holloway knows more about this than anyone because he was on the Seton Hall team that went to the Sweet 16 back in 2000, so he definitely has some experience his way.
Well, if I'm going to play a little devil's advocate for Gonzaga, despite the fact this team did go 0-5 against the RPI top 50, and yes, they beat St. Mary's, a team that surprisingly didn't even get selected as an at-large bid for this year's tournament, but still, Gonzaga boasts, as you mentioned, Donatas Sabonis, the son of a legendary NBA player, and Kyle Wiltshire, the former Kentucky player who transferred over to Mark Few's team in Spokane, Washington. This is a team that's gone 18 straight years. They've won the West Coast Conference. They are a sexy sleeper, if you will. They could do some damage in the tournament, but I think Seton Hall will get them. But let's look at the rest of the Midwest bracket, if you will.
Yeah.
Virginia against Hampton, the team from Virginia that won the MEAC conference against South Carolina State for the second straight year they're in the tournament. the Pirates. What do you think about their chances against Virginia, led by, of course, great player Malcolm Brogdon and London Francis?
If there was ever a time that there would be a team that was ripe for an upset, this could be the time. Although the one thing that I worry about with Hampton is they don't shoot free throws very well. That's number one. Number two, they don't have that much depth. And number three, Virginia is just so suffocating defensively. They're painful to watch shooting the basketball, although they have been a little bit better this year, but Virginia is just hands down better defensively than any team in that region right now. But then there's the issue of their seeding, because Virginia, some people thought that Virginia was not really deserving of a number one seed.
I know. Some people thought it should have been like Michigan State, which was very shocking to see that. But we'll get to Michigan State in a bit. But with Virginia in this bracket against Hampton, yeah, the Pirates don't really have a shot. I see Virginia, who doesn't commit turnovers, really getting the best of them. And then the next match, you got the Red Raiders of Texas Tech, led, of course, by Tubby Smith, who's taken 5 different teams to the NCAA tournament against the Butler Bulldogs of the Big East. This is an interesting matchup, to say the least.
This is a mild surprise seeing the Red Raiders into the tournament. And we're going to be talking about some of the surprises in a moment. But Texas Tech and Butler is a very, very unorthodox matchup. You've got the Red Raiders, who are a little bit of a transition team. And of course, they're very, very well coached by Tubby Smith, a guy who's more than had his share of March Madness moments. And a Butler squad that's become very, very physical and very, very well in tune with the play of the Big East Conference.
Exactly. And now, ever since Brad Stevens left to go to Boston, they still are clicking on all cylinders. The team that really, I think, could be the surprise, and you might think this is crazy, the Little Rock Trojans of the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah.
A team that went 29-4, and they're going up against a very tough Purdue Boilermaker squad.
Arkansas can score points, man. Do not underestimate them. Don't be surprised if you see them maybe pull off a first-round shocker in this one.
I think they will. I honestly believe. Yes, they go at a snail's pace, but they can score. As you mentioned, they're great. They excel in offense, defense, and three-point and the turnover department. They do play this, but you know what? The teams that speed up on them, they've lost against teams like that. But they've had some quality victories against San Diego State and Tulsa. So I really think they could pull the ultimate upset of the tournament against A.J. Hammons, one of the toughest people to go up against.
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of upsets, there's been an issue about which teams made it and which teams did not. The one team that people were really trying to push was Monmouth. Monmouth got snubbed of a spot in spite of the fact that they had a killer non-conference schedule. Could it be that maybe the fact that they lost 3 meetings against the RPI's top 100 might have been their undoing?
It could have been that. You know what? Honestly, the body work that they had this season, they should have at least been given a consideration. I think what ultimately hurt them was their loss in the finals of their tournament. That's right.
There's also the issue of the two teams that snuck in. There's Michigan and there's Syracuse. You look at Michigan's body of work. 10 out of their 11 losses this year were by double digits. Syracuse was very, very tough to figure out this year, and Jim Boeheim got suspended for the first 9 games of the ACC conference season because of internal violations. Did these two schools deserve to get invited?
Now, Syracuse, what's crazy about their season this year, they did win the battle for Atlantis in the early part of the season. They did beat teams like Notre Dame and Duke, especially from three-point range. And when they shoot 40% from downtown, they're 10-2 on the year. But ever since that loss, ever since the Battle for Atlantis championship, they've gone at a 500 record, 13-13 since the end of November. And they've had 2 wins against tournament teams, but twice as many lost teams outside the field of 68. So they are a confounding team, to say the least. And they are going up against a very tough Dayton Flyers squad that actually had some good victories against Iowa, Vanderbilt, and Monmouth, and held Alabama to 48 points at home. They are a tough team. And they had to do it at times without Deshaun Pierre during the season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are a classic team from the Atlantic team. They didn't win the tournament, unfortunately, for them. But you know what? Syracuse is going to get smacked. They're going to get killed in this matchup. Dayton is going to take them all the way in that Midwest Conference match. And the rest of the matches in the Midwest region, you got Iowa State, Iona, New York's very own from New Rochelle. Very happy for them.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they did defeat Monmouth. Iowa State, a team with a guy like George Niang and Monte Morris, one of the best underappreciated guards in all basketball, college basketball.
Yep.
I think Iona actually could pull off 2 victories. I think they'll win that match. I think they'll get into the Sweet 16.
That is a real shot in the arm for that school if they were to make it that far. You mentioned Iona. There's a lot of local flavor that's going to be in the tournament this year. There's Seton Hall, there's Iona. Stony Brook finally got over the hump and won the America East tournament. They had been regular season champions before, but they could never win that championship game, and they finally made it.
It was about time. The way they did against the Vermont Catamounts on Saturday was just electrifying, especially Jamel Werney, who had to score 43 points by himself with over 10 rebounds to lead this team to their first NCAA tournament appearance for Stony Brook, the Seawolves. And then, what's crazy, how about the Buffalo Bulls?
Yes.
Second straight year as the Mid-American. They beat the Akron Zips, and they do it with a first-year head coach.
Yeah.
They lose 3 of their top players from last year, and they still make it to the tournament this year again.
It's really interesting that you mentioned the change in coaches because they were really treading water for the majority of the season, and they just peaked at the right time. What do you see for them in their first-round matchup?
Oh, well, they got a very tough Miami squad coming out of the South bracket. And, when you think of Miami, you got to think, of course, Jim Larranaga and the job he's done there first and foremost, and the players like Angel Rodriguez. So they are going to be a very, very tough squad to go up against. But who would you pick if you were a betting person?
Miami's got so much athletic ability. I think Buffalo brings the heat defensively, but Miami's just got so much balance in their scoring that I really think that the Hurricanes can really put this one away comfortably.
Oh, without a doubt. And, and the other matches I forgot to mention in the Midwest Conference, you have Seton Hall, Gonzaga, Utah, Fresno State. Fresno State, of course, winning miraculously in the Mountain West Conference Final against San Diego State. Marvell Harris, 18 points.
Mm-hmm.
Great shooting from them. And Utah, Jakob Poeltl, a likely lottery pick in that matchup. And then you have Michigan State and Middle Tennessee. Yikes for the Blue Raiders of the Conference USA.
Mm-hmm.
I just see that as a really bad upset just waiting to happen.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. The Blue Raiders are going up against one of the best players in the country, Denzel Valentine. They're the number 1 team in assists per game. And you know what? Overall, you cannot deny the power of Tom Izzo and his ability to get this team to the second weekend and beyond.
Tom Izzo is the epitome of what a college coach should be. Humble, great recruiter, terrific mastermind, especially offensively, and he's got a lot of senior leadership, specifically with Valentine. Right now, Michigan State is slowly but surely becoming my pick to win the national title.
Me too. I'm actually going Michigan State all the way to win.
Yep.
But now on to the next bracket, the East. You got North Carolina, the Tar Heels, who just won both the regular season ACC and the championship against Virginia, which is no easy task. They got to go against either the winner of the Florida Gulf Coast Fairleigh Dickinson matchup.
Well, that matchup is basically gravy. It would be really cool to see Fairleigh Dickinson get that first NCAA tournament win in forever. But Florida Gulf Coast, or as we knew them as before from the first time, Dunk City, Florida's got so many athletes, and they run up and down the floor with reckless abandon with that transition game of theirs. Something tells me that Florida Gulf Coast is going to be able to get that third career NCAA tournament win.
Florida Gulf Coast, what's great about this team, Josh Dooley, who's the new coach of the team, comes from Kansas, from Bill Self's system, which he's employed a little bit of that, and he's tested a little bit of that Dunk City fast-paced offense, as you mentioned. And they did beat Stetson to win the Atlantic Sun championship against Fairleigh Dickinson, who unfortunately defeated Staten Island's own Wagner College in the NEC final.
Yeah. I saw the Florida Gulf Coast game. It was miraculous that they were able to win that game because Stetson gave them a lot of trouble. Plus, Stetson had a double-digit lead for the majority of the game, and somehow Florida Gulf Coast was able to turn up the defense in that game, and they were able to pull through.
But no matter who wins that game, I think it's going to be Florida Gulf Coast. Their prize is their early exit in the round of 64 against North Carolina, led by Bryce Johnson, one of the best front-court players in the entire country, along with Kennedy Meeks and that entire squad. Gordon Williams, another great coach like Tom Izzo. I do not see North Carolina losing at all.
Yeah, and you consider the fact that the game's going to be held in Raleigh, which is not too far from the Chapel Hill campus. Those Tar Heels are going to have all blue in the stands for that game.
Exactly. It's not even fair. But sometimes that stuff happens. For the number one seed teams, they always do that, give them home court advantage.
Yeah.
But, whoever wins that match, then you got the USC-Providence match. USC has really been a bubble team at times, too, but yet they had 5 wins against top 50 ARC-side teams. Those sub 105 losses. They have 6 different players that score at least 10 points a game, and this guy, Chamiz Metu, can also contribute, too. And they started 15-3 on the year. Isn't that interesting for this Pac-12 team against the Providence team that really, when you think of it, it's just Chris Dunn and Ben Bentil. That's it. Yeah.
Although Chris Dunn is a hell of a player. In fact, I think he might have been the best player in the Big East Conference this season. He can really shoot the lights out. He's clutch. He's going to give USC a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah. And here's the thing about Providence. Jalen Lindsey really emerged in the last 3 games, averaging 19 points. If he can turn it on like he did in the last 3 games, along with Bentil and Dunn and the rest of that bench contributing, they could make a run, maybe to the Sweet 16.
Quite possibly.
But I don't think they're going to go further than the game against North Carolina. Then you got Indiana Hoosiers from the Big Ten against the Chattanooga Mocs, who won, I believe,
the Southern Conference.
Yep.
Took the Southern Conference regular season and postseason. One of the best seasons that they've had. And Chattanooga is one of, if I'm not mistaken, 2 teams from the Volunteer State, not named Tennessee or Vanderbilt, that's going to be in the tournament this year. The other one is going to be the team with the colorful name that I like, the Austin P. Governors.
The Governors. Oh man, I do like that name too. I'll be honest. It is funny when you said it last week. Please just say it again so I can laugh right now.
Let's go P. Let's go P.
Man, you get me with that every time. But you know what? they are going to be peeing all right when they have to go up against the Kansas Jayhawks.
Well, let me tell you, Kansas has been a real enigmatic team in the tournament under Bill Self. They've had a lot of first and second round ousters. Granted, they're going to be playing close to home because they're going to be going up to Omaha. Not Omaha. They're going to be in Des Moines, Iowa, which is not too far from Kansas. But Kansas really needs to be on their A game this time because they're going to be going up against a squad that's not had much of a tournament history. So you know that Austin Peay is going to want to make a name for themselves.
I know, and the one person that you think of Austin Peay, Chris Horton is their best big man on the team. He's really the guy that they have to look towards. He averages the double-double a game this season, nearly 19 points and 12 rebounds a game.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Kansas can really find a way to stop him from scoring, then they hurt the Governors for sure. Because other than that, the rest of their offense pretty much goes through him. Mm-hmm. And they did win the Ohio Valley Conference against perennial winners Belmont. But you got the Kansas Jayhawks, who went on a 14-game winning streak going into this tournament. And you got guys like Devonta Graham, Wayne Selden, and Perry Ellis and the rest of the squad that are just a complete, utter nightmare that can make a huge splash in this tournament.
Yeah, let's see how Kansas does in the early rounds. If they can survive the early rounds, then they could be ripe for a Final Four run.
And then, of course, Kevin Ollie and his UConn Huskies win the American Athletic yesterday, beating the Memphis Tigers, and they go up against the Colorado Buffaloes of the Pac-12.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing matchup there. UConn is reminding a lot of people of the run that they made a few years ago when Kemba Walker not only led them to the Big East title, but to the national title afterwards. Some are actually comparing that team to this squad. There's not really that one big name that's been able to catapult them to the American title. It's been more of a collection of guys. And, of course, Kevin Ollie has done such a fantastic job with that program ever since he took over for Jim Calhoun after he retired.
Yeah, 2 appearances in the last 4 years, which is really unbelievable. But I'll tell you this. I don't see them getting that far. I think they will beat the Colorado Buffaloes, even though they got Josh Scott and Wesley Gordon, who own the glass, protect the paint very well. But I think overall they're going to play a much better game than them. And then you have the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors.
I've heard good things about Hawaii.
And they won the Big West Conference title against Long Beach State, and they're going up against the California Golden Bears. Isn't that that's an intriguing matchup?
It's a very intriguing matchup. California, that's a team that can play really, really physical, and at the same time, Hawaii is a team that can score points in bunches. This is going to be a really intriguing matchup right here. A lot of people have gotten on the Hawaii bandwagon. They really like that team.
Yeah, and what's great about this team, too, you saw the way they played in the Diamond Head Classic earlier in the year, beating Northern Iowa and Auburn by double-digit margins, and almost coming within 3 points of Oklahoma back in December. That was when Kadeem Ladin actually had a career-high 17-point performance for the Sooners. But the real reason that this team is clicking, Stefan Jankovic, the former Missouri recruit player who's averaging 17 points and 7 rebounds in Big West play. I really am intrigued by Hawaii. In fact, I have Hawaii winning against California despite the fact they have 2 potential lottery picks in Ivan Rabb.
Yeah.
I really think I just think California is ripe for an upset, and I think Hawaii is going to be the team to do it.
What else do you have in the other brackets?
Well, right now, if you look at the other games, you got the Maryland Terrapins, going up against the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State that won the Summit League. Let's not forget a few years ago, the Jackrabbits had a big upset victory in the tournament.
Yes, they did.
They were considered a big Cinderella story, and this time, you do got Scott Nagy, who has freshman Mike Dahm averaging 17 points a game in conference play. And transfer George Marshall from Wisconsin, who's also helping in the effort. Right. But you're going up against a very tough Maryland squad in Diamond Stone and, of course, Melo Trimbo. You can't, and Rasheed Suleiman. I think they're going to tear Jackrabbits a new one in this game, unfortunately.
Yeah, Maryland's just got so much depth, it's impossible to try and go against them. In fact, they could be a sleeper team this year. Not a lot of people are picking Maryland to go that far.
I have them going as far as the Sweet 16, losing to Kansas.
There you go.
The Arizona Wildcats, they will play the winner of the Vanderbilt-Wichita State game. Wichita State has had one of the most confounding seasons for Missouri Valley Conference team, they did lose in the semifinals against the eventual champion Northern Iowa.
It's funny you mentioned the word confounding, because that's exactly how people felt when they saw Vanderbilt's name picked for the tournament. A lot of people thought that Vanderbilt had no business being in the tournament this year.
Yeah, they are incapable of forcing turnovers. That's one of the worst things about this team. They were 5-10 away from home, and none of those wins even came against teams that were tournament bound. That's the sad part about them. So they are a terrible road team to boot. The one thing that they do have is an exceptionally talented inside-outside duo in Wade Baldwin and Damian Jones. Mm-hmm. They are two really good players that make that squad very good against Wichita State. When you think of Fred VanVleet, who was injured for part of the season, and you got Ron Baker too. Just tournament experience against the Commodores. I think experience wins.
And what else do you have in the other brackets, or the other games, I should say?
I have a Philadelphia matchup that will happen. You have Iowa against Temple. I think Temple will definitely take care of business and win that. And against the a team like the Iowa that's been inconsistent with Jared Utoff at times. Mm-hmm. But I think Temple will take care of business against Villanova, who I think will take care of the UNC Asheville Bulldogs.
Yeah, the games are going to be played in Brooklyn. Interesting that they decided not to put Villanova in the East region, because the East Regional semifinals and finals this year are going to be at Wells Fargo Arena in Philly. So that would have been a really big home court advantage for them. Instead, they sent Villanova, I think, is it to the South region or the West or the Midwest region?
It's the South region for these two teams that I think we're going to see a Philadelphia match. In fact, you have 3 Philadelphia-based teams in the tournament. I mentioned Temple and Villanova, but the St. Joseph Hawks, who won the Atlantic 10 championship against Virginia Commonwealth on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, isn't that amazing? 3 out of the 5 Philadelphia-based schools in this year's tournament.
Yeah, it's just a testament to the coaches on each squad. First off, Villanova has Jay Wright, who's done a tremendous job for them for 15 years. St. Joseph's, of course, has Phil Martelli, one of the most colorful guys you will ever meet and ever interview, too. And Temple, a team that's long had a tournament history.
So right there, Temple, coming from the American Athletic Conference, it's just, they were the team that ended SMU's almost perfect season.
That's right.
They've had some really clutch victories this year, and they've had some bad defeats. Villanova, of course, lost in the finals of the Big East to Seton Hall. And to me, at the South region, I think it's going to be Kansas that goes to the Final Four.
Well,
overall,
right now, I see Villanova. If there's any chance for a Big East Conference team to go far, it might be Villanova. Maybe to the Sweet 16 at the most. Other than that, I think Seton Hall is really going to have problems with Gonzaga. Seton Hall has way too many problems shooting the basketball and with foul trouble, and Gonzaga's just got so much physicality and brute strength. I think they're going to overwhelm the Pirates in that first round game.
Indeed. And the rest of the East region, I forgot to mention, you mentioned Stony Brook.
Yeah.
Stony Brook going against Kentucky. Kentucky, I think, will take care of business and win that match.
And I think Kentucky's going to use the fact that they were a number 4 seed as motivation. John Calipari went on a tirade against the selection committee for what he thought was too low of a seed. He thought that they should have been a 1.
The one thing about this team, though, they have terrible front court presence this year. They have a great backcourt duo in Jamal Murray and Tyler Olaf, but their front court is what could be their detriment in this year's tournament.
Mm-hmm.
They're 3-7 this year when they lose the rebounding battle,
mm-hmm.
and when you lose the rebounding battle, you pretty much lose the battle altogether.
Yeah.
So I think it's really going to be their major downfall. And you got Notre Dame, who end up needing the winner of the Michigan-Tulsa matchup, which you mentioned earlier, which was pretty confounding that both these teams made it.
Absolutely amazing. I'm still trying to come to grips with why Michigan a team that got beaten so badly in 10 out of their 11 losses, wound up getting a bid.
And not only that, they had to do this without Karis LeVert, one of their best three-point shooters. But Duncan Robinson is going to really have to take this team on his shoulders if they want to really make a run.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let's discuss some of the schools that did not make the big dance. We mentioned a team like Monmouth, which really loaded up on their non-conference schedule. But then you have a school like South Carolina, which had a terrific regular season, yet wound up getting omitted from the selection committee as well.
Well, they did have some terrible losses down the stretch, I think, in the last 2 months of the regular season and in the playoffs, too. I think that's what lends them count to the selection committee. I think St. Mary's Dale, that's the one that really gets me above all besides Monmouth. And he didn't make the tournament this year with their body of work. So they'll all be in the NIT tournament for sure.
Speaking of the NIT, Wagner's also going to be in the NIT.
I'm very happy to hear that. I hope to see them make a run. I think they could. Wouldn't that be something? They make it all the way to the finals at the Garden.
That would be wonderful. It would be such a high. It would be such a bittersweet ending to their season, especially considering that they won the Northeast Conference regular season title but bowed out in the tournament title game. If they could make it to the Garden, that would be a really, really good saving grace for them. But they've got St. Bonaventure in the first round, and they have to travel upstate to take on the Bonnies, and that's going to be a really tough matchup for them.
Wow, they got a very tough Atlantic 10 team in St. Bonaventure, as you mentioned. And the way they played it in the finals against Fairleigh Dickinson, down the stretch in the second half, when they had a dominating first half, they got killed by the three-point play.
Yeah.
And I think, the Bonnies, I think they shoot very well from the three-point range. So if Wagner wants to win, they have to not give up easy three-point plays and defend well from beyond the arc. If they don't, then they will fall.
So true. So overall, who would you have in your Final Four?
Well, you know what? The team that I didn't even discuss that I really like, the Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks.
A team that went undefeated in the Southland Conference. In fact, they've dominated conference play the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years ago. I think they have a 55-1 record in conference play.
They are 59-1 under their head coach, who will at some point be considered for a major coaching job down the line. Somewhere down
the line, he's going to have to see himself maybe in one of the Power 5 conferences, because after dominating in the Southland for so long, maybe it is time for him to try and get to that next level. I mean, not to say that he should leave, but a guy like him, some team that's in either the ACC or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the Southeastern Conference or the Pac-12, they're going to want a guy like him to try and reconstruct a program.
Without a doubt. So you want to know my Final Four?
Yes.
Okay. Add the South, I got the Kansas Jayhawks winning it. Add the West, the man, the myth, the legend from Oklahoma, Buddy Hield and the Sooners.
Interesting.
Because I really, despite the fact, yes, you got Holy Cross and Southern, you got St. Joe's against Cincinnati, Baylor against Yale, a team that hasn't made it since 1962, winning the Ivy. Duke against UNC Wilmington. In fact, I had Duke losing that matchup. And Northern Iowa beating Texas, and Texas and Green Bay, the Phoenix, of course. After 20 years, they win the Horizon League. And you got Oregon State and VCU. But Oklahoma, to me, just they live and die by the three-point play, but I think they're going to be able to balance that out. I think their rebounding will come out alive. I really believe this Oklahoma team has a chance to really make a run to the Final Four against Kansas. And this is going to be my surprise pick from the East region, the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Interesting. Very interesting. Of course, it's not necessarily a shock, because West Virginia is not only well coached by Bob Huggins, but they play such tough defense that no team is going to want to go up against them in a big game.
But the problem they had was in the tournament, especially in the finals, because they did have a big upset, in the semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did go to the finals against Kansas. West Virginia beat Oklahoma to get to the finals.
Yep.
So it tells me right there they can play against teams like that. Jay Sean Page had a terrible performance in the finals. He needs to really be that sixth man off the bench, along with the rest of Chauncey, the rest of that squad. I think they really can make a run to the Final Four, and I got Michigan State from the Midwest region.
Yeah, I also like Michigan State as well. I also like to see I'm really interested in seeing what Kansas can do in the early rounds. If they can get through the early rounds, then they'll have a strong opportunity to make it to the Final Four. The one team that I'm watching out for, though, is Oregon. Oregon looks like they're really peaking at the right time. I mean, they just dismantled Utah in that Pac-12 title game, and they bring so much balance to the floor. I also like North Carolina. What's that?
I'm sorry, you were saying.
Go right ahead.
Dana Altman has done a great job with that team. Dylan Brooks, the Canadian winger, and just the rest of that squad is just unbelievable with the Ducks.
Yep. So my picks are Michigan State. I like Oregon. I think North Carolina also makes it into the Final Four. I think they have the most balance. And as far as a sleeper pick to get to the big game, probably Virginia, simply because of their defense.
Man, isn't that something? I cannot wait till tomorrow when all the networks, when True TV finally starts broadcasting the NCAA tournament. I'm very excited. How about this past weekend, some of the other things in sports, like this past Saturday from Toronto, Canada, a wrestling held WWE Roadblock took place.
That's right. Exactly what happened.
Well, tag team championships, all the championships pretty much stayed the same. The New Day defeated the League of Nations, Sheamus and King Barrett, via the big ending by Biggie Langston. Chris Jericho is now a heel. He just turned heel.
Eventually that was going to happen because he's spent the majority of his WWE career as a heel.
Oh, yeah. I think he is just as good a heel as he is a face. He can do either one.
I think he's more believable as a heel.
And you know what spawned that last Monday in the tag team title match? It was him and AJ Styles against the New Day. The New Day defeated them. Chris Jericho was pretty pissed, so he took his anger out on AJ and did 3 code breakers in a row on him.
Oh, brother. So what else happened?
Well, he defeated Jack Swagger via submission, Chris Jericho. Mm-hmm. And then the NXT Tag Team Championship, I love NXT. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, granted, they say it's the minor leagues. People think NXT is even better than WWE at times. And this team, you're going to love them. Enzo Amore and Colin Cassidy, they did lose the Revival, but they are my favorite tag team.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Colin Cassidy, a big 7-foot guy who can do a lot of things that other people's sides couldn't even dream of.
That's really interesting.
Enzo Amore's got the weirdest haircut in the world, but I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte defeated Natalya Neidhart in front of her countrymen.
That's right.
Yeah, she's from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brock Lesnar defeated the Wyatt family in a handicap match, though it was mostly him and Luke Harper-Bray didn't want any part of Brock at all.
Mm-hmm.
Canadian sensation Sami Zayn actually defeated Stardust.
Mm-hmm.
And Triple H retained his championship with the pedigree over Dean Ambrose, but I have to say it was a very respectable match for the title.
Very good. And around the corner, if I'm not mistaken, is WrestleMania.
That's right. Right now, everything is on pace for Triple H to take on Roman Reigns and for Dean Ambrose to face Brock Lesnar. But I think there might be a caveat. I think they may put Dean in the title match, making it a triple threat, and having Bray Wyatt versus Brock Lesnar.
Very interesting.
And you do have Shane McMahon versus The Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you. I'm not particularly impressed with the matches that are going to be at WrestleMania. I am impressed with the people that are going to be making it into the Hall of Fame, though.
Oh, God, wow.
One of them,
yeah.
and I'm very happy to see this happen to him because he had a really useful shelf life with the company, is the Big Boss Man.
Oh, was that? He was part of that corporate ministry too. He was an actual prison guard.
That's right. That's how WWE based his character, because he was a prison guard in his home state of Georgia.
And so he was so true to life. He was able to seamlessly get into that character, and that's why he had such a great career. And it's sad that he passed from this world. And believe me, I wish he was still alive, the guy. And he's not the only one being posthumously inducted. There's another group of guys, I believe, that's also being inducted into this year's Hall of Fame posthumously.
Yep.
There's a group, in fact, a stable that's being inducted.
Interesting.
And also, Sting, of course, is being inducted.
Yep. Not really sure why, considering that he spent the majority of his career in the old Universal Wrestling Federation, followed by World Championship Wrestling.
And the Godfather, the train.
Now, the Godfather is pretty interesting because he's been with the company on and off for about 25 to 30 years. I mean, and it's not just as the Godfather either. He started out as Papa Shango, and he also had a couple of other characters to him, including his time in the Nation of Domination. He was also the Good Father when he was in Right to Censor. So he's had a very, very long, underrated career with the company.
I just found something out. Breaking news. Another person to be inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Which is?
Jacqueline.
Miss Jacqueline. Yes, that's right. One of the toughest divas to ever step into a squared circle. And if I'm not mistaken, I think she's the first and only woman to hold the WWE title. Not the women's title, but the men's title.
And what's crazy, she made it on to WCW back in '97. That was like her coming out party, and she was then jumped to WWE in '98 with Marvelous Mark Merrow.
That's right.
And she's had some interesting battles in the ring. She was a very tough person, and she actually answered the challenge against Chavo Guerrero.
That's right.
So she was one tough lady, but class act too, and can fight.
Yes, I remember Jacqueline very, very well.
I'm very happy to see her inducted into this year's Hall of Fame class. And I'm trying to get the names of the other Hall of Fame members for 2016.
Mm-hmm.
But in other news, how about the NFL free agency period?
Yeah, it's been really hot and heavy. Of course, around here in our neck of the woods, the talk has been about what the Jets and the Giants have been doing.
The Giants have done an amazing job. Look what they've done. They signed JPP back to a one-year deal. They signed Olivier Vernon to an insane $85 million contract.
Yeah.
They also got Jets player Damon Harrison to be on their defensive line. So they really beefed up on their defensive line. They got Janoris Jenkins, probably one of the best cover corners available this year, to sign with the Giants. They did a great job.
Yep.
They did a great job, and they had the money to do so.
Let's see if these moves can pay off, though, because if not, and all these guys turn into flops, then you will definitely see the last of Jerry Reese as the general manager. He's basically bankrolling his future on these three guys.
Oh, without a doubt. And especially JPP getting him back to a one-year deal is really going to be something to look at. But Janoris Jenkins, you see what he brings to the he does bring that toughness to that secondary that needs a quality cover corner alongside Dominic Rodgers-Marty.
Mm-hmm.
Jenkins had 3 picks last year to go with 15 passes defense. So that's really a great move. I love what Tampa Bay did, retaining the services of Doug Martin. They had to. It was a must.
Yep. You mentioned the Giants before. One other thing that they did, which kind of went unnoticed, is the fact that they were able to convince Victor Cruz to restructure his contract, which translates into him taking a pay cut.
He had to. You know what? He didn't play any game last year. This is his prove it year, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he needs to be healthy for the entire season, and if he is, and he plays the way he used to play before the injury, along with Beckham, I fear for any secondary that has to defend them. I really do. If he gets back to that old style.
Yep. Now, as far as the Jets are concerned, I love the Matt Forte signing. The fact that they gave him just a 3-year contract is a stroke of genius, first of all. But there's still the issue of Ryan Fitzpatrick. His agent is asking for, quite frankly, an undeserving contract and an undeserving amount of money. And now I'm hearing rumors that maybe the Denver Broncos might be interested in Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I also heard, though, the Denver Broncos are going to pass on him, or might pass on him, because the money he's asking for is just way too rich for their blood. In fact, they made a trade to get Mark Sanchez from Philadelphia because of that. That's
really interesting, considering that, one, I think Sanchez is a better player than Fitzpatrick, first of all. And second of all, maybe this is a chance for Sanchez to really bring his career back from the dead, because after playing half the season in Philadelphia in 2015 and sometimes looking really, really ridiculous at it, maybe it's best for him to kickstart his career in a new surrounding. Not necessarily be better than Peyton Manning or Brock Osweiler, but at least get to the point where he could do something, anything, to try and make things interesting for the Broncos in 2016.
I think he could, but I think they're going to push hard for Colin Kaepernick, and they're not the only team in the Colin Kaepernick sweepstakes. The New York Jets will probably put their hand into it, as well as the Cleveland Browns. So those are the 3 landing spots I think Kaepernick will end up being at. I don't think he's going to be in San Francisco coming into next year, despite the fact his skill set matches what Chip Kelly wants. But I think Kaepernick is so upset with upper management. I think there's something brewing that nobody has discussed. I think he will be out of San Francisco with one of those 3 teams. But as to the Ryan Fitzpatrick situation with the Jets, his agent, the bloodsucker Richie Sexton, who's a venomous vampire who is responsible for Brock Osweiler getting that $74 million deal with Houston.
Yeah, that's a big gamble that the Texans took. Granted, they need a quarterback. And let me tell you, anybody is better than Brian Hoyer. But to bankroll their future on a guy who's made 6 career NFL starts, I think that might be putting all of their eggs in one basket.
But I do like the move that Houston made to get Lamar Miller. At least they replaced their running back. You know, they get a running back that actually has not had injury issues like Arian Foster.
Yeah.
You know, and in the last years, Lamar Miller with the Dolphins has had nearly 2,000 yards on the ground and has averaged 4.8 yards a carry. So somebody that I think could get a lot of mileage for that running game with the Texans. As for the Fitzpatrick situation, he needs to come to reality and realize he's not going to get that $16, $18 million deal at his age, despite the 31 touchdowns he had last year. It's not going to happen, Ryan. The Jets don't have that kind of money to give you.
Well, Eric, you better brace yourself, because there has been Robert Griffin III rumors to the Jets.
Oy vey.
Exactly. Supposedly, he's going to be meeting with the Jets tomorrow. Depending on what happens, I'd say it's 50-50 that RG3 makes his way over here.
Well, whoever goes there is great. If it's him, you know what? Let's see what happens. Even though we know what's going to possibly happen, I hope that Fitz, his agent, and the Jets, they come to their sense, agree on a contract that's reasonable in the $12, $13 million range somewhere and can get this contract done. But the two teams that I really am happy for, Oakland and Jacksonville, what they did in free agency.
Jacksonville has done very, very well for themselves, especially defensively.
Like, you've got one of the best overall free agents in Malik Jackson, who just came off the Super Bowl 50 victory with the Denver Broncos, had 45 quarterback hurries and 5 sacks last year. Got a big $90 million deal. You signed Chris Ivory away from the Jets to go along with T.J. Yeldon in that backfield. That's going to really be dangerous in the AFC South.
Mm-hmm.
And they did sign some good cornerbacks. They had some good cornerback help, too, as well, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just, but the Oakland Raiders, getting Kelechi Osemele, I know, it's a funny name almost.
Yeah.
But he ain't smelly, I'll tell you that. He smells like gold when he plays at his position.
Well, go ahead, Eric.
I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
I was about to say, with about 4 minutes left in the show, we'd be remiss if we did not mention some of the other stuff that's going on, specifically in hockey, baseball, and basketball. Hockey was a really tough weekend for the local teams. The Rangers and Islanders both lost. The Rangers lost a really tough home game to the Penguins a couple of days ago. The Islanders had their heads handed to them by the Boston Bruins. The Devils were able to get a solid road victory in overtime, mind you, in San Jose.
And the Rangers also lost Saturday to the Red Wings in overtime.
Yeah.
Another painful loss right there. And we're almost coming up with just weeks to go before the regular season ends.
That's right.
The Rangers really better get their act together right now.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they could miss the playoffs for the first time in years.
Yep. Speaking of playoffs, the first two teams to clinch in the NBA playoffs are the Warriors and the Spurs, the two best teams in the league right now.
Which is no surprise.
Yeah, which is no surprise. As far as what's going on in our neck of the woods, the Knicks had their last meeting with Kobe Bryant last night, and it took a Jose Calderon three-point shot just before the buzzer to win it for the Knicks, and the Nets are still dreadful.
Well, that's also no surprise because both local teams stink, and we're hearing more and more with Phil Jackson wanting to go back to L.A. We're hearing these stories coming out, and I wouldn't be upset really at Phil if he left. If he wanted to go back to L.A., it really wouldn't be that shocking or upsetting.
Now, would he go back to retire, or would he go back to work for the Lakers?
Oh, work for the Lakers, if anything.
I think he realized, even at his advanced age, I think he's realizing the mistake that he made.
Oh, without a doubt. I think, he thought he can come to New York, be the savior, bring the triangle to a team that doesn't have the skill set for it.
Yep. As far as baseball is concerned, Matt Harvey threw 4 scoreless innings in a recent exhibition game, and he looks stronger and stronger by the moment.
And I'm going to see the Mets play March 20th against Boston this coming Sunday. So.
Yeah, because you're going to be in the Florida area, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you're also going to take in the Florida Panthers game, right?
I don't know if I will be able to. They asked for like $300 for these tickets.
That's a rip-off.
Oh, without a doubt. It's insane, because they're good. They're actually good this year, and they're going to make the playoffs. They're number 1 or 2 in the Atlantic Division. So,
yeah,
it's just insane this season.
Yeah. Well, Eric, we're coming up on the end. I see that Eileen just made her way back to the other side of the glass, so we're going to bid you adieu. And before we go, I just want to say, enjoy your trip in Florida. Thank you so much for joining us over the phone under these circumstances, and we hope to see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much, Jamie. And to you of all Staten Island, love you guys. Have a great time watching the tournament, and I'll love you all.
Thanks, guys. And thanks to Eileen on the other side of the glass. Eric, have fun in Florida.
Thank you, Jamie.
For everyone here, I'm Jamie. Enjoy your NCAA tournament. Good night, everyone.
Peace, Staten Island.